Tonight, the high-stakes showdown here in Philadelphia between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump. Their first face-to-face meeting in this presidential election, their first face-to-face meeting ever.
A historic race for president upended just weeks ago. President Biden withdrawing after his last debate. Donald Trump now up against a new opponent.
The candidates separated by the smallest of margins, essentially tied in the polls nationally and in the key battlegrounds, including right here in Pennsylvania, all still very much in play. The ABC News presidential debate starts right now.
This is an ABC News special, the most consequential moment of this campaign. Kamala Harris.
Together, we will chart a new way forward.
Donald Trump.
We will soon be a great nation again.
Face to face, historic. The ABC News presidential debate. Here now, David Muir and Lindsay Davis.
Good evening, I'm David Muir, and thank you for joining us for tonight's ABC News presidential debate. We want to welcome viewers watching on ABC and around the world tonight. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump are just moments away from taking the stage in this unprecedented race for president.
And I'm Lindsay Davis. Tonight's meeting could be the most consequential event of their campaigns, with Election Day now less than 2 months away. For Vice President Kamala Harris, this is her first debate since President Biden withdrew from the race on July 21st. Of course, that decision followed his debate against President Donald Trump in June. Since then, this race has taken on an entirely new dynamic.
And that brings us to the rules of tonight's debate. 90 minutes with 2 commercial breaks. No topics or questions have been shared with the campaigns. The candidates will have 2 minutes to answer questions, and this is the clock. That's what they'll be seeing. 2 minutes for rebuttals and 1 minute for follow-ups, clarifications, or responses. Their microphones will only be turned on when it's their turn to speak. No pre-written notes allowed. There is no audience here tonight in this hall at the National Constitution Center. This is an intimate setting for 2 candidates who have never met.
President Trump won the coin toss. He chose to deliver the final closing statement of the evening. Vice President Harris selected the podium to the right.
So let's now welcome the candidates to the stage. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump.
Kamala Harris. Let's have a good debate.
Nice to see you. Have fun.
Thank you.
Welcome to you both. It's wonderful to have you. It's an honor to have you both here tonight.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their number one issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after
Tariffs
75 years,
are
pay us
taxes
back
on
for all
us.
that we've done for the world.
That's the
And
sales tax.
the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because it was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that Xi and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression.
True.
Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again. I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas. I guess some good, some bad.
By name.
It makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic. And the pandemic was not since 1917.
Remember when you said it was a hoax?
100 million people died. Has there been anything like it? We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country
I
where
lost
the
6 friends from
and
the pandemic because of your hoax.
was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns. We got masks. We did things that nobody thought possible.
What's your opinion on the mask?
And people give me credit for rebuilding the military.
Now that your people don't want to use it?
For a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounced back, and it bounced back, and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy, and the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy.
True.
What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
It's just a soundbite. They gave her that to say. Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences.
There he
that
goes.
are just,
He's done.
Oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off.
What do you think?
For
They're
years.
just going to keep
I was the only
the
president
difference?
ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries.
No.
And, if she doesn't like them,
That's not how
they
it
should have gone
works.
out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in
That's not how
billions
this
of dollars,
works.
hundreds of
I
billions
can't
of
believe
dollars.
he was ever
I
president.
had no
let alone
inflation,
even
virtually
CEO
no
of a company.
inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the
Oh, this
history
is
of our
painful.
country because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else.
Meanwhile, I just came from the
people of
grocery
our
store.
country are
Cheap as it always
absolutely
has been.
dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response, and you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out, when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi, exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window.
This is where I think
she's
the
going
mic
to my
should be on.
philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, is doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart, and they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came to your desk?
Well, I won't have to because, again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50, and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of? When they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then her, I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea, and how unfair that would have been. Part of the reason they lost to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free, but they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D., and I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people.
And why do you think that is?
They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter
Useless
what she says
Republican
about going to
House.
Congress. So wonderful. Let's go to Congress, do it. But the fact is that for years, they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, I want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working one or two jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs. Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body, and that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
Excuse me, I
thank
have
you.
to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer the question? Would you
because
veto?
under Roe v. Wade,
Answer the question. Would you veto?
you could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said, we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security. We know it's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime, trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first. And I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And
she fills stadiums.
She's busing them in and paying them to be there, and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back.
It's not true. Oh, where are the fact checkers when you need them?
We're a failing nation.
I found one and it stopped.
3.5 years ago. And what's going on here,
like
you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating They're eating the pets
She's laughing at
of the
him.
people that live there.
She's
and this is what's
laughing at him.
happening in our country, and it's a shame. As far as
I mean, I am too.
rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they
This
go
guy,
is they
there's
like
no
what I
way he
say.
actually
They wanna
wants to
bring
be
our
president.
country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase: "Make America great again." She's destroying this country.
Put
And
Trump
if she
behind
becomes
bars.
president,
That's where he
this
belongs.
country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, will end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well,
All
I've
this-
seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is
The people on television say
clear-
my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good
Yeah.
thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
But the
television.
people are
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying their
manager.
dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice
We'll
President
find
Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme.
She's laughing
You
at
know,
him.
this is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election, I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly
Exactly.
worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know the
Yeah, David
inside
Hickson,
track on who
that was
the former
fact checked.
president is, if he didn't
And
make it clear
was
already,
actual
just ask
because they
people who
also
have
had
worked with
video
him.
of it.
His former chief of staff,
Meanwhile,
a four-star
speaking
general,
of
has said he has
needing to
contempt for the
fact check and
Constitution of the United
Photoshop,
States.
it's a
His
fact
former national
that Trump's
security
staff
advisor has said he is
actually
dangerous and
spread out
unfit.
people and had
His
them
former
leave their coats a couple
Secretary
seats
of
over,
Defense has said
so
the
it looked like
nation,
half the people there
Republic
were all
would
in the
never
bathroom.
survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American
This
people
right here
are not
is a
being
Trump
addressed,
supporter.
I think
Ignorant,
the choice is clear in this election.
uneducated,
President
and
Trump, will give you a quick
following
minute to
him
respond.
blindly.
Thank you, because when I hear that,
For
see,
those
I'm a
listening on the
different kind of a
radio,
person.
I put
I fired most of those people. Not so graciously.
comment
They
that we
did
received through
bad
Facebook
things or a bad job.
that's not
I fired
appropriate
them.
for the
they
radio.
never fired one person.
And
they didn't fire
it's
anybody
just an
having to do
ignorant
with
comment, and
Afghanistan
that's all
the
this guy
Taliban
is.
and the 13 people
And his
whose
candidate's no different.
were just killed viciously and violently killed. And I
Your
got to know the
business
parents
flourished
and the
under him
family.
because it was a
They
reflection
didn't
of
fire-
the
they should have
Obama
fired all
economy.
those generals, all those
The
top
reason why it
people,
started doing
because that
crap
was
at
one
the
of the
beginning
most
of Biden is
incompetently
because you were
handled situations
experiencing
anybody
Trump's economy.
has ever seen.
Fact.
So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper; he was no good. I fired him. So
Is
he
that why
writes a
you had
book. Another one writes a
44
book. Because
cabinet
with me,
members?
They can write books. With nobody else can they?
Because you hired the
But
best and the
they have
brightest, and then
done
all of a
such
sudden
poor
had to
job,
fire him
and they
for a
never
15-member
fire
cabinet?
anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In
And you
fact,
lost.
I got more votes than any sitting president in history by far.
Except Biden.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier. So let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S.
With local
military.
police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah, it is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why?
That's why
Because they've
Venezuela
taken
is
their
rioting
criminals
right
off the
now.
street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes. but it's not worth it.
You have to be an
because
American
they're
citizen to vote in a
destroying the
federal
fabric
election.
of our
Anybody with a
country by
brain
what
knows
they've
that.
done. There's
Or can
never
find
been
it out.
anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in, and all over
January
the world,
6th, that
crime is
destroying?
down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof.
It's
Despite
actually
their
down,
fraudulent
way down.
statements that they made. Crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice
Excuse me,
President
the
Harris,
FBI they were defrauding statements.
Oh, that's right.
Didn't
The
include
FBI is
worst
fraudulent.
cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was
That's
a
not
fraud.
true.
Just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes.
Exactly, and they're not
election
finished with that.
interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal.
No, he's
And
not
you
winning
saw
any
that
of
with
them.
the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country.
No.
They weaponized the
And
Justice Department.
exactly
Every
is
one
what
of those
he said he
cases
would do.
was involved
What
with
was
the
his
DOJ
campaign in
from
16?
Atlanta and Fawny
Lock
Willis
her up.
to the
What happened
Attorney
to due
General
process?
of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case?
He admitted
They said,
it.
oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's
By a judge
weaponization,
you
and they use it,
appointed
and it's
who
never
has
happened
made
in this
many
country.
decisions
They use
wrongfully
it
in your
to try
favor.
and win an election.
President
They're
Trump.
fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize
that's what
the
he said.
Department of Justice against his political enemies.
Here we go.
Someone who
Here's
has
exactly
openly
my point about the people that
expressed
still follow
disdain
this knucklehead.
for members of our military.
David Hickson
Understand
wants
what
to
it
say
would
that
mean if
all
Donald Trump
Kamala's
were
good
back in
for
the
is
White
stripping
House
on Maury.
with no guardrails.
As in Maury
because
Povich, I
certainly
guess.
we know now the court won't stop him. We know
Stick to
J.D.
corn,
Vance is
dude.
not going to stop
That's
him.
what you do.
It's up to the American people.
Vice President
stop
Harris,
him.
thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president,
We gotta
This is the
continue
one
here.
that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head.
Lock
because
her
of
up.
The things
Isn't
that
that
they
what you
say
said in
about me.
16?
They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to
Crooked
democracy.
Joe Biden?
They're the threat.
Isn't that what you
to
said before he was
democracy.
actually
The
tried or
Russia,
accused of
Russia,
anything?
Russia investigation
We do have a lot to
that
get-
went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported
That'll never happen.
decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a
20% of
harder line.
Democrats
I know you
carry a
say that
gun.
your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position
We're
is
drilling
that
more
we
now
have
than we
got
have in
to
history,
invest
including
in diverse sources of energy so
during
we
the
reduce
Trump
our reliance on
administration.
foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history.
For the
because of an
record,
approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on
that
foreign
part
oil.
is all the way to the
As
left
it relates
for
to
a
my
reason.
values, let me tell you, I
He's
grew
a
up
comb-over.
a middle-class kid
Fact.
raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager.
Maybe sit
The
down and
values I
listen,
bring
David.
to
You'll
the
learn
importance
something.
of home ownership,
Because you're not
knowing
going to get any more
everybody got
honesty
handed
than right here.
$400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down and name calling.
Boom.
The true measure of the leader is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump, your
Well,
response?
first of all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens.
Every time,
And a
all
great
6
father, and
times
I
you went
learned a lot
bankrupt,
from him, but I was
Daddy
given
bailed you
a
out.
fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And
No,
when people
that's
see it,
actually not
they are
true.
even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now, if you don't mind, please.
She's laughing.
Does that sound familiar? She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal.
None of that's true.
She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish, one thing so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before.
Also not true.
When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately
The prices
let
went
these
up
guys
because there was
go
demand.
to where they
COVID
were.
was ending.
I would have been
Ended by the Biden
five
administration.
times,
Everybody
times
was now
higher,
getting
because
out
you're
and
talking
moving.
about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead. Fossil fuel will be dead. We'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out of it. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400,
President
500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that we
for the
have to get
environment,
to.
as
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office.
For
You
3
did send
hours.
out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message
It was at least
telling
3
your
hours.
supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my
Zero.
speech, not later on. Peacefully
No, he didn't
and
say that.
patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer.
Not true.
That should have never, ever
Nancy
shot
Pelosi
her.
was right
It's
inside
a
that window.
disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar. Remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, oh, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people?
Meanwhile,
when are they
fewer
gonna be
people came
prosecuted?
across the
When are
border
these
illegally in
people from
July
countries all over the world,
than
not just South
January
America. They're coming in
2021
from all
during the
over
3 weeks
the
that he
world,
was still in
David.
office.
All over the world.
He
And
still beat
crime
him.
rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
when
ask
are
you-
those, David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle? They went into Seattle. They took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people
Oh, this
going
is
to be
painful.
prosecuted?
I might have to go make a
Let me
drink.
just ask
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward
Good
another
for you,
election.
David.
Is
Good
there
for you,
anything
man.
you regret about what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big.
You said you
I
were
went to
going
Nancy
to the
Pelosi and the
Capitol.
mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never
they didn't.
happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible.
It's
She
not the
didn't do her
question.
job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi. But I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the president of the United States incited a violent mob
Correct.
to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died.
6 of them died.
And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. Let's remember that when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia, the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say, we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going
Boom.
back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course for the future and not go backwards to the past.
Let me just follow up here.
It was a different term, and it was a term that
No,
related
that's what
to
you
energy
said.
because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where Bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville,
No.
that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people. They
From
covered
Fox
it.
News.
If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up.
You're,
I ask you
you're
this, you
mentioned
talk about
300
the Capitol.
times in 900
Why are we
pages.
allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it.
And it's
I
not
would say
millions.
we would both leave
Nowhere
this
close to
debate
that.
right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't
She
need
tried.
bills. They have the right to do it.
They
The
actually wanted
President
to
of
do
the
it through
United States, you'll get 'em out of
legislation.
bed, you'll
And
wake
you
them up
cut
at
it
4 o'clock
down
in the afternoon,
because
you
you
say,
wanted
"Come
to
on,
use it
come
in
on
your
down to the
favor
office, let's sign
during
a
a
bill."
campaign.
If he
That's
signs
pathetic.
a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal.
That's been done.
If they do that, the border
That's been
is
done
closed.
Mr.
Those
because
people
you
are
prevented
killing
it from
many
having
people,
it
unlike
done
J6.
legislatively.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly
Boom,
falsely
here it
claimed
comes.
that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say that.
sarcastically.
But
You know
those-
that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls. And we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them
No
Republican.
judge looked at it.
And said
They
there was
said
no
we didn't have
widespread fraud.
standing. That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system?
No, they said
where
there was
a
no
person
fraud.
in an
A
election
guy in
doesn't have
Philadelphia walked
standing?
out of
The
his own
president of the
courtroom
United
laughing.
States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that
this
is
is painful.
dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing
Bald
that.
spot.
But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have
Told ya.
talked with
been
military
saying that.
leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did, in fact, lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just say about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person.
He's a dictator. You're talking about the guy from
Prime
Turkey.
Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago, it wasn't. Why is it blowing up?
There were
He
more
said,
than a
because
dozen
you
military
need Trump
conflicts
back
that
as
we had
president.
boots on
They
the
were afraid
ground
of him.
in
China was afraid. And I
during
don't like to use
the Trump
word afraid, but I'm
administration.
just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline
which brought
in the
down the
world.
price of gas.
Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president, but when this weak, pathetic
That's not true.
man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he
President.
got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but
Mr.
I'm
President,
okay with it
Mr.
because
President, your time is
I
up.
think we're
Thank
going to
you.
do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now
Yes.
to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis, many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters, because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever. I know
they were already in
very
Crimea.
Well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years.
Not true
have gone
also.
into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up. Far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, She hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one.
Actually,
She hates
you haven't
Israel.
been good at
At the same
predictions
time,
because
in her own
twice
way,
you said there was going to
she
be
hates the
a bad
Arab
economy,
population
and they
because
both grew.
the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah.
You
or
had
any of the
sanctions on that were
28
there
different,
already.
spheres of terror, and they are spheres of terror.
This is
Horrible
painful.
terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money.
There you go.
For
Kiss
terror.
up a little bit.
They were broke. Now they're a rich nation, and now what
No,
they're
they're not.
doing is they're spreading that money around.
Oh,
Look at what's
Oh, this
happening
hurts.
with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator
true.
on day one, according to himself.
his own words.
It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear. They can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security,
Harris.
including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
They're the ones, and she's the one that caused it, that's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders
How's Ukraine
of
doing
other
inside
countries
Russia?
think that they're
Pretty
weak
good.
and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective.
Because it's feeding
and
Europe.
Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
All right, so just in case you want to hear actual footage from January 6th, you know, the peaceful one that we talked about. Let's see if I have any footage from that.
Is the only president in American history who has refused to guarantee the peaceful transfer of power.
Joe Biden
He lost the election and he knew it.
to become the president.
He betrayed millions of Americans by telling them the election was stolen.
Stop the steal.
He ignored the rulings of dozens of courts. Rather than accept his defeat, he mobilized a mob to come to Washington and march on the Capitol. Then he watched on television while the mob attacked law enforcement, invaded the Capitol, and hunted the vice president. He refused for 3 hours to tell the mob to leave. There has never been a greater dereliction of duty by any president. Trump was warned repeatedly that his plans for January 6th were illegal. He didn't care, and today he celebrates those who attacked our Capitol. Donald Trump has proven he is unfit for office. Donald Trump is a risk America can never take again.
That was a hockey stick that guy was swinging. Tell me again how that's peaceful. I used to be a referee. I promise you, nobody swings a hockey stick like that peacefully. This is the fire that this guy's feet needs to be held to. And that's why I think there also need to be topic-specific debates so you can spend more time on them. We got 25 minutes left. This is going to be a 90-minute debate. We got 25 minutes left. All right, well, while we're here, I'm going to tell you about one of the guys that sponsors me during the week, Momentum Fitness in Pasco County, right on US 19, formerly Monster Mouse Fitness. And I used to say, go to the house of the mouse. Now get some momentum with Momentum Fitness. Like I said, right in 19 in Fort Ritchie in Jasmine Estates by the Arby's in that shopping center. Just one shopping center north of the Ryder truck and storage facility. Go to the House of the Mouse and get some momentum. They've got new equipment. They've got an expanded area. They expanded into one of the stores right aside of them. They've got an outdoor workout space. They've got a plunge tank for the cold water thing that's all the rage now. They've got a sauna, which was my thing. I always loved heat therapy. Actually, before a workout, kind of like jumping into a microwave to warm up your muscle. And still got the trainers, dietitians, better proteins. From May of 2023, when I lost my one dog, Matrix, or Moby rather, up until, really for another year, I was in a huge slump. Haven't been to the gym. Been back now, feeling so much better about myself and feeling better. And it's because of Momentum Fitness. You guys seen the Joker movie that's coming out? Folie à deux. But yeah, Momentum Fitness. I can actually, for those on the video, there I am. Hey, gang. So, yeah, I found one thing for fact checking, and it stopped. And I think it's because they got so busy. This guy just is such full of it. It's funny. Kamala Harris, used the same word I did. If it wasn't sad, fascinating that this guy made it anywhere, let alone to the head of what he says is a multi-billion-dollar company. Although that's actually, he doesn't let accountants in there very long. We'll say that. Not to mention to having been elected president. It is sad, knowing some of the others that I know personally. Let's get back to it. Oh.
Presidential debate tonight. We're going to continue here, and I want to turn to the war in Ukraine. We're now 2.5 years into this conflict. Mr. President, it has been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend democracy, that it wins. You may have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you, if Ukraine to win this war.
I want the war to stop I want to save lives. Being uselessly, people being killed. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look,
Oh, okay.
we're in for 250 billion, or ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions of dollars when I said even more. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect. Why? For what reason? Phone call in 2 years to Putin. Hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left. I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. And we have a president that we don't even know if where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they
here,
threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he a president that doesn't know he's alive?
Your time is up. Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop.
Again, we can't answer a question. Yes, sir.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me.
Boom.
I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president. We understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability to fight for their independence. Otherwise, with his eyes on the rest, starting with Poland. Why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right in Pennsylvania how quickly you would, for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow, much happier than he is right now. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening. But he does have that, something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin. And she did. And the war started we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's of our country. She
Actually,
goes
political
down as the
scientists
worst
say
of
you
our country.
will be
But let me tell you
president number
something.
47
She
again.
is a
That's when
horrible
Kamala kicks your ass.
negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends, favor our strong men instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is commander in chief, and the American people have a right to rely on a president who stands the significance of America's role, ability, and in principles, and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We've talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time. He's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by Europe and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you.
President
Otherwise,
Trump.
we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. There is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban gets Taliban terrorists released. And get this. And the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place significance for us as Americans. That's where we honor the
Yeah.
importance of American diplomacy,
Donnie.
where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this Camp David appreciate the role and responsibility of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you'd be
killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing
You
the killing.
surrendered.
That's the
That's
fighting
actually what it's
force
called.
within Afghanistan. You know, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved as the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you got nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason
Which sucked.
it was
Everybody
good,
else says it sucked.
we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion
I was
worth of
waiting for
brand
this.
new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to
$85
finish,
billion is the
they
total number of
blew
money
it.
invested
The agreement
since
said
day
you
one.
have to do this.
All the
and they
equipment
didn't
that was
do it.
left there
They didn't
was
do it.
scuttled.
The agreement
The
was
Taliban didn't
terminated
get
by us
anything.
because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move
And
on.
these people did the worst withdrawal and, in my opinion, the most embarrassing. And by the way, that's why they attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country. Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, I didn't know she was black until when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known black. I want to ask a bigger picture. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. Whatever she wants to be is okay with
Your word. So I'm
I
asking.
don't know. I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then
That
I
she
read
put
that she was
out?
black. Up to her. That's
Wait.
up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who's to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people.
And sex.
You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to
Discrimination.
rent property to black families. Remember, this is the same individual took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young Black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread bird lies about the first Black president of the United States. And I think the American people want better than that.
They're tired.
Want better than this.
It's over.
Want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at. I meet with people all the time who tell me Can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your third time.
This is presidency, history of our country. There's been anything like it. They're
Not even
destroying our
close.
country, and they come up with what she just said. Mayor Bloomberg agreed with me on. They said they pled guilty, and I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person, and ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. To stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, one of the greatest economies in the history of the world.
Going
It's gonna
into
be
it
bigger, better,
and screwed it
stronger.
up.
But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. They're all single
painful.
policy. And remember this, Biden, I don't know the gentleman, she says, she is by
When did she say
inflation
that?
we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Your time.
Clearly, I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do, generation of leadership for our country. One who believes in what is possible, optimism about what we can do instead of all the American people. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and compare the plans. I have a plan. Give startup businesses 50 tax deduction to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, sirs, first year of your child's life, to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight, as opposed to a conversation constantly about belittling and let's turn age.
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President
Let's
Trump,
turn
we
to
have
policy.
to move on. President Trump,
Let's turn to policy,
She has
please.
a plan to defund the police.
Turn
She
his
has a
mic
plan
off.
to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
She
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move
to
on to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or
Not true.
anywhere else.
Okay.
Thank you,
That's
Mr.
what her
President.
plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
respond
President
because
Trump,
no, the
President
former
Trump,
president has said
no, I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to
No,
respond.
and move on, Vice
one
President
time
Harris.
to what he
President
has said
Trump, this
multiple
is
times.
now your
Yes.
third time running for president. You have long
You let
vowed
him
to repeal and replace the
continually
Affordable Care Act.
rebuttal.
Also, no, you have failed to accomplish that. You now say
She's
you're gonna
not
keep
tried to do that
Obamacare,
once.
quote, unless we can do something much better. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's
My
not very good
parents
today.
had
And what
decent
I
health
said
care
that if we come up
when
with something,
dad had his
and we
own
are
company
working on things,
and mom worked for an
we're gonna
oil
do it,
company.
and we're going to replace it. But
They used
remember this.
Obamacare
I
to get
inherited
one
Obamacare because Democrats
insurance
wouldn't change
policy
it. They
that
wouldn't vote
covers
for it.
both of
They
them.
were
They now
unanimous.
have
They
better
wouldn't vote
coverage
to
and
change a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president.
he
Do I
had control,
say
couldn't get it
Never
done.
going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good
That's
people.
why you
in
fired
this
them, because they're the best.
administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get
Oh,
rid
that's
of them.
right.
But
Their
let me
bad
just
ones are worse
explain.
than your bad ones.
I had a choice to make. Do I say good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing, but it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health, then I would absolutely do it. But as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan.
I have right now. But if
You should still have a
we
plan.
come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there
Oh,
are
I
concepts
just
and
wanna go
options
drinking.
we have to do that.
just wanna drink.
And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
Vice President
Oh,
Harris,
okay.
in 2017,
We'll be hearing about
you
it.
supported
That's
Bernie Sanders'
good.
proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private healthcare options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff.
Boom.
As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said at the time, because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care
That's
Act
one of
has
your
done
boys,
is eliminate
Donnie.
the ability of insurance companies to deny people with
Rest in
pre-existing
peace,
conditions.
John.
I don't have to tell the people watching tonight. You remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it.
Vice
Past
President
prologue
Harris, thank
in terms
you.
of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a lot of
Obama said it's not finished.
Number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get.
President
People
Trump-
are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know
Said
is
that
that
about
it is very
COVID
real.
too.
You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up.
Mine
You
jacked
ask
up,
anybody who
$1,200
has
a
been,
month.
The victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have
We're
created
drilling
over
more now than what
800,000
we've
new
ever done.
manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud
Carrier,
to have the endorsement of the
air
United
conditioning.
Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also
Oh,
investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country.
The ABC News presidential debate will continue after this. The ABC News presidential debate will continue after this.
Why has America accepted the wait for payday? Why has America accepted the wait for payday? When life doesn't wait for you to get paid. Why has America accepted the wait for payday? When life doesn't wait for you to get paid. Introducing MyPay from Chime, a revolutionary new way of getting your
not
pay
a good time to
when
go
you
to
want.
a
Get
commercial.
up to $500 of
peeing.
your pay before payday. No interest, no credit check.
Ugh. Well, so somebody tell me in the text, did they cut him off? Did they actually finally cut him off? I mean, that would be awesome. Anyway, all right. 1038, 1490, WWPR. Still going. That's what I was listening to in my bathroom break. Yeah, we kind of said this was going to be 90 minutes, and we're going to hour 37 right now. I don't know if we still got to do, definitely there's going to be closing remarks. So there's that. But yeah, I think they're doing well, the moderators. If they're going to cut at a certain time, then you cut at a certain time. You don't let somebody like Trump come in and say, well, I just want to say this, and then not allow Kamala Harris to do the same thing the one time she's asked to do it. But I don't really think she needs it. I think she's beyond holding her own. I think she's doing well. She's calling him out on, I don't think she's pointing out each individual lie. because there's not enough time for that. But there's the, let's look at that. That's the Constitution Center on the bottom right. And that is, it looks like the 30th Street Station on the top right. Philadelphia was my first office. That's how I know. So we're seeing a lot of people joining us on social media. Hopefully also all of you on 1490. Again, you can hear Up the Middle 5 days a week, every day on Yergz Radio, YERGZ, radio.com, 11 a.m. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we're on for an hour. Monday and Friday, we're on until 1 p.m. Political, current events. We're also bringing back local news to local people, meaning that we are using some of our actual listeners and other people that we've developed relationships with to essentially be our reporters on the street. And in effect, as a result, bringing back local news coverage on some level. We don't have it in newspapers anymore. And we really don't have it at a lot of, I mean, TV news is stuck doing regional and maybe they might be in your neighborhood. But for the different things that are actually happening in your neighborhood, stay tuned. We'll be here. Like I said earlier, we're starting up with Tan Talk. With that network, 1380, I think it is. WTAN. Google it. WTAN and WDCF. So 2 AM stations, 2 FM stations. And now our coverage will be as far north as Brooksville, as far south of Saratoga. Depending on if we can get let's see, that would make, a 6th and 7th station. There's some stations to the east. We might be able to get as far out as Lakeland, Polk, and almost up to Orlando. They're back.
Heard tonight two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've
She's
had
been
three
doing
and a
it.
half years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She has go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack. We're not going to take fossil fuel. We're not going to do things that are going to make this
Didn't we
country
discuss
strong,
this?
whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughing. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me.
Oh, that's
They
right. You
call
know
me.
'em.
We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no one's. The power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan.
Didn't
What
give-
these
oh.
people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center. I'm Lindsay Davis.
And I'm David Muir. Thank you for watching here in the U.S. and all over the world, and from all of us here at ABC News. Good night.
All right, everybody, there it is.
And we are here live on ABC with our post-debate
Yeah, he
comments.
couldn't get off that
I'm
stage
Martha
fast
Raddatz.
enough.
It was a lively debate from the economy to abortion to Afghanistan. They had.
Yeah, gang. I don't see the appeal. I had a commercial running on Yerg's radio and on my show that as it was simulcasted. And I asked Trump supporters to come forward and be interviewed. I asked for them to. Sorry, I'm getting a message. I want to make sure that we're still on the air on YouTube. I asked for them to sit down with me virtually, something like this, and talk to me about what the appeal is. I have two brothers that follow this asshat. They can't tell me why they like him. I think the three things are: there's a certain demographic, like the guy that was texting us, earlier tonight, who sadly isn't smart enough to figure out what this guy's all about. Then there's others like my brothers who aren't dummies. And I think they're embarrassed. They can't admit they've been had. And so they dig their heels in further and say, we're the ones that are fake news, or, whatever. I can't turn it that way. Or whatever the phrase of the week is. And then third, there's the dummies, there's the smart ones that are digging in. And well, I'm going to close because I got to go get a drink. God. But I asked these people to sit down with me and tell me what the appeal is. Nothing he said is factual. Let's just see what the ABC people, Jonathan Karl's on right now.
Is feeling tonight. I can tell you the Harris campaign feels very good. They feel they had a very strong night, that she was in command, that she did look presidential, and that she was able, they feel, to hold Donald Trump accountable for his actions. And of course, that was their goal going into this, that she would be able to put Donald Trump's record under a microscope on abortion, where she was able really to blame Donald Trump directly to his face. I mean, she said, what you are putting women through is unconscionable. Yes, she goaded him. She flat out trolled him many times, got him off message, but she also talked directly to voters, even inviting them to a Trump rally to underscore that central argument in her campaign.
Yeah, I noticed that. She looked at the camera. He looked at the moderators. Big deal.
Okay, yeah, well, look, the Trump campaign is going to be seizing on the fact that Vice President Kamala Harris did not do a great job today really explaining her policy shifts, right? And that is what they have been seizing on. They're really trying to define her for voters when voters have a lot of questions about her policy positions. At the same time, though, almost every single thing that Vice President Kamala Harris said tonight got under Trump's skin. And that is exactly what his allies and his advisors did not want to see. I can tell you, I do not think that part of Donald Trump's debate prep was people eating dogs in Springfield or comparing rap. Stay focused on the issues, especially the ones that he has an edge on: Harris, economy and immigration.
I mean, you want to get under Donald
Which he
Trump's
really
skin,
doesn't have.
question the people at his rallies. And that was something else. Martha, you have?
I have with us right now Governor Tim Walz, of course, the Democratic vice presidential candidate. Welcome, Governor Walz. How are you feeling? What's your reaction to the debate tonight?
I'm feeling great because what I knew, and I think so many knew, and now many Americans know, is you saw a president for all America in Kamala Harris. You saw the confidence, you saw the vision, you saw the poise, and you saw the compassion for people, understanding she spoke about an economy that moves us forward, moves all of us forward, lets everybody be a part of it. And she continued to lay that out, whether it's reproductive freedom or how we start small businesses or making home ownership easier. And on the other side, you saw a nearly 80-year-old Donald Trump, angry, unhinged, and as you've been discussing, talking about things that are deeply concerning because they make no impact on the American public. He shouldn't be anywhere near the White House. And I have to tell you, if it weren't so dangerous, it reminds you of an old man yelling at the clouds. That was his thing. Get off my yard. That's what he did all night. Contrast that with the voice of Harris laying out the question for everything that matters. And so I think the country can see what happened tonight. We'll keep pushing forward. That's the way that the country wants to see our politics be. She laid it out clearly. Donald Trump brought nothing tonight. Anger, resentment.
Governor Walz, I do want to ask you, she did not answer questions on abortion restriction. She never really answered that question. Can you clear that up where the Harris-Walz ticket stands on that?
Certainly, and you couldn't get any different than this. The reinstitution of Roe versus Wade, what was the law of the land for 52 years. You saw this in there, and him pushing back to the states. She's exactly right. It's people like Amanda in Texas, which everybody saw on the stage in Chicago, nearly bleeding out, having sepsis twice because she can't get the care. She's been absolutely clear on this. Everything Donald Trump said, that is untrue. The clarity of this is Roe. When you have Roe, you have the protections in place where women make their own decisions with their healthcare providers, not Donald Trump.
Okay, thanks so very much for joining us, Governor Walz. John?
And we have the other side of the ticket. We have Senator J.D. Vance, Donald Trump's
This ought
running
to
mate,
be
joining
good.
us now. Senator Vance, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Sean. I appreciate it.
So I want to get to one part in the debate where you came up. Donald Trump was asked if he would veto a national abortion ban. He didn't answer the question, suggested, I guess, that he wouldn't. And then it was pointed out that you, in fact, said not that long ago that he would veto a national abortion ban. Can you explain the mix-up here?
Well, I think the president's been very clear that he doesn't want a national abortion ban. I think in some ways he finds the question a little bit ridiculous because why are we asking him about legislation that's never going to actually happen and why he would veto it or not veto it when he says very explicitly that he doesn't support a national abortion ban and he wants these policies to be made by the states. But I think there's a deeper and more important issue here in this debate, which is that you had Kamala Harris effectively echoing platitude after platitude after platitude. The American people can't pay their grocery bills on platitudes. They can't put their kids in a house on platitudes. And Kamala Harris had a lot to say.
Actually, she
but
did
very
talk about
little
putting people in a
actual
house.
substance behind it for how she's going to lower grocery prices, secure the border, and make housing more affordable in this country. She's been the vice president for 3.5 years. She can't run on a record, and she apparently can't run on much of her plans either because it's just a lot of slogans and not a whole lot of substance.
But Senator Vance, why won't he just say that he would veto the national abortion ban? And by the way, had you spoken to him about it before you were put in a position to answer that question?
No, I hadn't spoken to him about it because, again, Donald Trump thinks the question is absurd because he doesn't support a national abortion ban, and he's been explicit about it. And, John, I think that it's so preposterous for the media to focus so much on an issue where Donald Trump has been crystal clear and not on the fact that people can't afford groceries and housing because of Kamala Harris's policies. This
That's
election
not
is
true.
actually quite simple, and Kamala Harris and apparently the media would like to distract Americans on issues, by the way, that Donald Trump's been crystal clear about.
Answer the
But
question.
they're not talking
Then
nearly
we can
enough.
talk
This
about your
debate didn't
economy.
talk nearly enough about the fact that Americans are struggling because they can't afford groceries, they can't afford housing, and a lot of their kids are dying of fentanyl overdoses because Kamala Harris has let the Mexican drug cartels take over the southern border. This is a disgrace
Senator,
what's going on in our country, John, and we could do so much better if we just had better leadership. We've got the best workers, the most beautiful country, the best natural resources, but Kamala Harris's leadership is squandering the great benefits of this country. It's why we've got to get back
Senator,
to Donald Trump's leadership.
Senator, by the way, I asked because he hadn't been crystal clear and he said something different than what you said. That's why I was seeking clarification. But let me ask you about this for just very quickly. I heard Donald Trump
Yeah, maybe he'll answer this
debate
one.
describe Kamala Harris as, I'll just read a few of them, a low IQ individual, somebody who doesn't have the mental capacity to be president, really dumb, unable to put two sentences together. Is that what you saw on the stage tonight?
John, what I saw was a lot of slogans. I think the American people are smart, and Kamala Harris talks to them like they're children. She repeats
No, she
these
doesn't.
ridiculous
She talks to them
platitudes where if you
caringly.
actually think about what she said, you realize that it doesn't make any sense. She talks a lot about her plans, but then her plans, when you analyze the substance, don't make any sense. And more importantly, John, the American people don't get fed on plans. She has been the vice president for 3.5 years. What she can't do, refuses to do, and has no ability to do is to say, I accomplished lower prices because she didn't, or I accomplished lower housing prices because she didn't, or I secured the southern border because she didn't do that. She has failed as vice president. And the fundamental question is, do we want to give her a promotion? I think the answer has to be no, John.
All right, Senator Vance, thank you for joining us. Mary.
One thing both sides can agree on, this was a consequential night in this race. More reaction when we come back. Stay with us.
So, yeah, I mean, he didn't really answer any questions
Why has
either.
America accepted the wait for payday?
There we go. We might be having Blake Fisher, the host of The Homeless Conservative, joining us. He just messaged me. He was on earlier tonight, too. I'm guessing he's wrapped up and still has some energy. He sees that I sent him a link, so we'll see if he pops up or not. What are you thinking? What are you thinking right now? Let us know in the chat. Give us a call, 1-888-88-YERGS, 1-888-88-YERGZ, and we'll get some final thoughts. Maybe get Blake on here. I don't see him yet. But yeah, I don't agree with everything Kamala Harris said. I would like her to be a little bit more thorough and clear. But I think that when you criticize Joe Biden for giving too many complete numbers, and now she's more in general, how do you want it? I think that's Blake, give me a wave if you're ready. All right, let's bring out the host of The Homeless Conservative and co-host of Up the Middle Fridays, Blake Fisher. I think he's still getting some notes together or something. Or maybe he didn't give me a thumbs up.
Sorry, I'm plugging my thing real quick.
Wow. That is getting the llama look. We were goofing. Matt, our third co-host on Fridays, Matt Deemer and I were giving him some banter today in our group chat on Facebook. And I don't know if I have that.
I think Matt's just jealous of it.
Yeah, he goes with the tight rather religiously.
Sorry, I'm just plugging something in. I forgot.
Yeah, that's right. Good. That's not what I wanted to do. But so, what'd you think?
I mean, I've got a lot of thoughts. I think that if that's the only debate we get, it's kind of it's a shame. I think that we're just not very. It seems like we're not a very serious country. I mean, it's just that was not a serious debate. It didn't seem like. Even the moderators were, I think, really bad.
I thought they did okay. What I didn't think they did well on was that they said you're going to have 2 minutes, you're going to have 1 minute, and then Trump kept coming back and say, "Well, I got to address this, I got to address that," and they let him do it. And then the one time she wanted to do it, they shut her down.
Yeah. Hold on. Sorry, I'm plugging this thing in.
What are you doing?
Well, I mean, here's what killed me about the moderators.
Yeah.
Most of the time, it
was mostly David Muir, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, she didn't really do a lot, and really neither one of them pushed back well enough against, the things that they either didn't answer. That was my biggest problem. They'd ask a question, the candidate would not answer it, because almost every time they just dodged it and they went rambling about something else. Kamala did it so often that she kept repeating the same thing she'd already said. She can tell she was so rehearsed that she'd say the same answer from another question for a question unrelated, because she was like, well, I need to talk about these things. It was like, it's like she had a list of things to talk about. And if all else fails, you don't know what to answer, just answer this question. And instead of coming back, they did it a couple times where they came back and were like,
that's kind of a usual strategy.
I know, but what drives me crazy is that it's not that hard to, you and I could moderate this debate better than ABC did, in my opinion. I think that I know it was, everyone remembers it for the disaster that it was for Biden, but honestly, the moderators of the CNN one were good. I thought they had good questions. I thought they had good follow-ups. I think that they were fair. The ABC ones fact-checked Trump 3 times. Do you know how many times they fact-checked Kamala? 0. There were plenty of lies from both of them. My point is, are the moderators fact-checkers or not? I don't think they should be. I think that
so I was on the one site that said that they were going to fact-check in real time, and it stopped. I mean, was that because they couldn't keep up?
No, I think it's because, here's the thing. Here's my opinion on debates. I don't think that the moderators should be fact-checking other than the candidates themselves. So, for example, I think that, because I think that's the other candidate's job. I think if you ask Donald Trump a question like, hey, would you have done anything different on January 6th? Which I actually think was a fantastic question. I think that's a really good question.
I agree.
Put it, it's like, do you have regrets? Is there something you wish you would have done differently that day? Because normally, a normal person would have an answer of course, yes. I mean, in the moment, you have to make decisions, and sometimes they're wrong, or sometimes you wish you would have done them differently. He couldn't answer the question. They did follow up with him to say, I think that was a good question. But then, like, the fact that they're not going to, the fact that they fact check him 3 times, when what you really do is, if he dodges the question, you give Kamala Harris a chance to hit him on dodging the question or hit him on lying. That's who should be fact-checking, is the other candidate that's on the stage. They should be holding each other accountable. The truth is, neither one of these people have a grasp on the facts or policy well enough to be able to do that. She can't really do it very well with him. He can't do it very well with her. So what happens is that you end up with almost 2 hours of
Yeah.
them spewing lies and no one checking them on it. Like almost everything she said was not true to some degree. In fact, including some really like Donald Trump is bad enough. You don't have to lie about him. So I don't understand why Democrats keep going back to this, like, find people on both sides quote, which was absolutely not what he said. He said way worse things, but the Charleston thing was not Trump's fault. And he did not praise the racists that were there. It didn't happen.
Well, what about when she addressed the stand by quote?
That's fine. That's a fair thing to pull out. But my point is they keep pulling out the Charleston thing, the both sidesism or whatever. And it's just like, you don't have to lie about Donald Trump to point out that he's a flawed human being and maybe wasn't the best president and maybe could be dangerous in the future and has bad policy ideas. I think those are all things you can say without having to make something up. But she resorted to making up a bunch of stuff tonight that frankly it was because like things that were clearly lies. And the thing that bothered me, keep in mind, I don't like Trump. I don't think he's a good candidate. I think every other Republican nominee that ran this past year would have
done better
with Kamala Harris. Every single one of them on the stage, including my nemesis, Vivek Ramaswamy, who I do not like. And I think he's he's an empty suit, but he absolutely is very good at speaking. He's really good at making a point, and he's really good at saying it in a way that voters understand. Neither one of these candidates can talk to the voters that they need to win over in November. And it's hilarious to me. It's like
you don't think the way she looked at the camera and he looked at the moderators.
That for sure. Yeah, that was definitely. I kept a plus minus thing going the whole time because it's really hard to score these things, right? They're not.
Yeah.
People are always like, "Who won the debate?" I'm like, I think it's more complicated than that. I also don't think you like win a debate and then you go on to be the president necessarily. We're probably only going to get one, which is also weird because normally we get 3. I bet we're not going to get another one because I think that they're both just so relieved that they got through this. Because really, Kamala got
was off the stage. Did you see that?
No, I had bailed because I was trying to. I was a miscommunication on my guest I was supposed to have. And we're going to do it tomorrow now, but I don't know. I just feel like you have the moderators were clearly in the can for Kamala. Even some of the questions were ridiculous. Like my problem is not that like you can. I'm not team Trump, but I am team the news media should be a fair and impartial. The moderators should have been impartial. They were clearly not impartial. Include the most egregious thing to me was when, what did they bring up? Was it January 6th that they brought up? And then they went to her for a reaction, even though he had not mentioned her. So she didn't get a rebuttal like that. She either gets the same question, but it was just like, what do you think about Donald Trump's, failure to do anything on January 6th or something? It was such a
the thing that I went in his favor rather aggressively. They were supposed to get 2-minute segments to answer a question, and there was something like 1-minute rebuttal if the moderator chose to give it to him. It wasn't a guarantee, as I understood it from the beginning.
Yeah,
but then that was it. When the moderator says we're done, we're done.
Yeah, but they could also just turn his mic off.
But he kept pushing forward and saying, well, I got to address this, I got to address that, and the other thing. And they let him do it. Then the one time she wanted to do it, they're like, no. And they cut her off. And the camera went to the moderator and everything.
I didn't notice that. I mean, they cut him off a couple times too. So I don't think it was entirely the one-sided thing that you think it might have been. But, maybe it was. I feel like I don't feel the moderators did a good job, but I also, like, here's what I want from a moderator in this kind of situation. I think both these candidates are very bad. I think it's the media's job to point out that they're both bad. Because I think that's the point.
Yeah, but didn't we just get over that?
No.
I like from the beginning, they just showed it again. She went over to him and introduced herself.
Yeah.
As if to say, I'm the one you've been talking smack about without even knowing.
Well, to me, it was more of like they've never actually met. So I didn't take it as that. I took it as they've never actually met in real life before. This is the first time they're debating each other. So it seemed like a polite. I did not gather from it like, oh, I'm the one. And what's funny, do you know what everyone thought would happen going into this? Everyone was like, she is dying because she wanted to change the mics, right? Her campaign was the one that wanted the mics to be open the whole time because
Well, well, it was Biden's who wanted the second one to be off, or I guess the first one this year to be off because of how he kept cutting in 2020. Will you shut up, man? Remember that?
Right, but what's so stupid is that you are better off letting Trump interrupt you. Like,
yeah.
And so Biden getting rid of Biden muting the mics is not entirely the reason that he is not running for president anymore, but it's a big reason. He never is going to get the line out about we defeated Medicare because Trump would have interrupted him before that long pause. So without the muted mics, I don't think Biden performs as terribly. And without the audience too, the audience was a huge problem.
He plays to an audience.
Now,
Yeah.
I love not having the audience. I actually think that every debate going forward should not have an audience. Primaries.
We're talking to thousands of people right now, and I don't know it.
Right, but
I'm in my third bedroom.
yeah, but the audience in the room for a presidential debate or any kind of debate, honestly, I don't think is helpful because
No, I agree.
people cheer when they're not supposed to cheer. They even though they're supposed to be quiet, they're not. So why have the audience if the audience isn't supposed to react? But also, then the audience it gives politicians a way to not fill the time if they want to by having a good line and getting an applause, and that stuff would work on everything she was trying to say. It doesn't sound as good when it's not at a rally, and it's the same problem that he has. Both Trump and Kamala really have to have a crowd and a teleprompter. I mean, he doesn't want a teleprompter, but if he wants to be the president again, now we can talk about polling if we want to, especially since I won't be around Friday. If he wants to be the president again, though, he has to get on script, and he was not on script tonight. You could tell when he was. His closing statement, for example, how is that the first time in almost 2 hours that you say, "Hey, Kamala, you've been the vice president. You're part of the current administration right now. Why have you not done all these things that you're promising to do?" Like
Even though she actually answered that earlier in the debate.
Right, but he should have been. Here's the problem with this race for both of them is that it's neck and neck. It is going to be decided by a handful of people that are paying no attention, maybe even right now, even though we've been through one of the crazy.
I don't think so.
Election cycles. I think that's who's deciding this race because most people are already in a camp one way or the other. They're either team blue, team red, team Trump, team Harris at this point. Her polling she did not get a bump after the convention. She did. No, she did not. She got her bump before the convention. No polls showing her with a bump after the convention, which is not a great sign for her. So the other big problem.
He went down.
What?
He went down.
Well, they fluctuated. She has not gone up since the first kind of couple weeks of Biden dropping out. Her peak was the week of the debate before her speech. She did not ever. You normally get a bump in the polls after the conventions. This is normally how it goes. So it should. I promise you, her campaign is worried about not getting a bump after the convention. They're worried about it. I know you don't believe polls, Jurgs, but I promise you they believe it. The problem is that the New York Times poll that came out was basically asking generic questions like, what do you want? And if something, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it was something like 60 to 80%. Some giant chunk of the country wanted a change, like wants a change in the White House. Then they're followed up with, who do you think is a change? Which is an interesting question because Trump was the president 4 years ago. Kamala Harris is the vice president right now. We don't have, both of these people have been.
You're going to get something you had before.
You're going to get something. It's not going to be total change. They view him, they do not view her as a change candidate. It's only like 20% of the people polled that said they want to change view her as a change. She is chained to the Biden administration because she's in the Biden administration. It makes sense. Voters aren't idiots here. She has to figure out a way to get away from that, or I think she will lose. That might mean throwing Joe Biden further under the bus than they already have. I think tonight.
I don't think he cares about that.
I'm not saying he cares. I'm saying she would have to do that. I don't. So far, that's not been in the playbook. To me, it should have been tonight. If she did fine, but Donald Trump. If there's a winner or a loser, Donald Trump lost it. It's not that Kamala won it. She wasn't. She did fine. She didn't have any she did talk extemporaneously at some points, but it wasn't like she was her normal rambling off script trying to be funny thing. Like you could tell she was well rehearsed, which I said going into it, she would be. She's a former prosecutor. She can memorize the lines and the points, and like she can do that stuff. She can't be asked a question that she doesn't already know what she's going to be answered. Does that make sense? Like you can't just like off the fly. What bothers me the most about both of them is that neither one of them answered, I think, the most important questions that are either asked by the moderators or actually in the president's job description, foreign policy stuff. Both of them were incoherent on foreign policy. That bothers me because I think we will have a bad foreign policy president no matter who wins this.
Don't you think we're already in World War III?
No, because we are not in an active war right now. And I know that
not we, the United States, but we, the world.
We and none of our allies are in any wars right now. So no, I don't think so. I don't think you can just say because Russia's in Ukraine.
Israel's an ally.
Well, but Israel, sorry, you're right. Israel's one.
NATO.
But NATO's not.
You're saying none of the NATO countries.
I'm saying no NATO countries. So without any NATO countries, sorry, we do have allies that aren't NATO countries. Yeah. And even most of them aren't in. And really, Israel's thing, I don't even consider. It's not really a world war. They're fighting a terrorist group. It's just not the same thing. Like fighting terrorism.
But it is, because today it's get rid of one side being in one uniform. This ain't a hockey game. This is urban warfare.
Well, and that's what it is.
And that's why I say Iran is there. China is there. You don't know what they're doing on the down low. I mean, how long did it take for them to figure out that when Iran lost their president in that helicopter crash, that it actually wasn't Israel?
Well, I would preface this by saying I think you could call it a new Cold War. I think that would be a fair thing to say. I think that there are some legitimate allegories there that work out as far as, and you can, I think it's with China less than it is with Russia this time, obviously, because like Russia's not an economic. The difference between the original Cold War and this one, if it's between the U.S. and China, and we would call that a Cold War, is that we're not firing at each other. But the difference is that China is actually an economic competitor to us, and Russia, the Soviet Union at the time, was not. I think it's let's compromise and say it might be a new Cold War, but I just think that when we don't have boots on the ground anywhere, and with no NATO countries in a war, and all the wars we're talking about are either civil wars in countries or I know that there is an axis of a-holes, is what most people are calling the like North Korea, China, Iran, and Russia.
Right.
They're definitely interested in helping. It's like the enemy of my enemy is my friend. It's not like they are working together for sure, but it's not quite the Axis or the Allies from World War II yet. They're not like backing each other up with troops. They are helping each other out with money and weapons, and mostly they're scratching each other's back on economic stuff. Like China's happy to see the stuff going on in the Strait with the Houthis attacking ships, because it makes their shipping lanes more attractive if the West can't get stuff via that stuff. So yeah, China's happy that stuff's going on. I don't think we're in World War III until Iran and Israel are in a legitimate, like actual war, and not just a proxy war, and actually, more than strikes on assassinations, because that's all Israel's done so far is assassinate specific people. They're not attacking, they're not even hitting military stuff, really. I mean, they're hitting people. So I think until we get to that point, I wouldn't call it a world war. But I mean, I think it is. Everyone's right. We are knocking on the door for sure with Russia and Ukraine, and the Israel-Gaza stuff could certainly escalate to an entire Middle East war. If those things happen simultaneously, or if China invades Taiwan, or North Korea just does something crazy, I think the next president is going to have a lot of foreign policies, like emergencies that are going to come up.
How do you counter Trump's claim that none of this would have happened under his watch?
I'll be honest. I think it's actually one of Trump's better points. I'm not saying it's not. First of all, it's non-falsifiable. You can't, other than the fact that none of this did happen under him. So it's not.
But Russia was already in Russia was already in Crimea.
No, but that was under Obama, and Russia went into Georgia under Bush. So I mean, like, it is interesting. He does have a point, and I think people do have a point that Russia invaded or went into sovereign territory, whatever you want to call it. I mean, he went into sovereign territories under Bush and Obama, and then not under Trump, and then did it under Biden. That could be a coincidence. It could be that Russia didn't want to do anything those 4 years. I do think Trump has a little bit of, there's the famous story that allegedly, and I don't know how much of this is even true, allegedly Ronald Reagan fired all the flight traffic controllers.
I was just talking with somebody about that today.
Went on strike, and allegedly part of the idea behind that was like, I'm going to come in and do something really unexpected that seems kind of crazy because the Soviets need to know that I might do something crazy, and they basically played into that for a really long time until I just read a book. It's a fantastic read if you want to. It's called The Spy and the Traitor. It's about the British got a KGB to double agent for them, like a really high up, like literally ran the British embassy kind of thing. And got him to flip, and really his information about what was going on within the KGB in Russia helped Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan kind of dial that back a little bit, because they thought, once we learned that the KGB in Russia or Soviet Union thought we were going to strike first, because that's what they really thought. They thought we were going to just randomly strike them nuclear, like preemptively. And once, Reagan and Margaret Thatcher kind of learned that, they changed the way they were talking a little bit, not because it influenced, but they go, okay, maybe we've hit the gas too hard on this thing of they think we're crazy mavericks that are maybe going to blow up the world preemptively. So I think there's a little bit of that with Trump. I think that now, I don't think his is strategic. I think there's a huge difference there. I think Ronald Reagan was a smart politician and knew what he was doing, and he was actually playing chess. I think Donald Trump just says what he thinks, and sometimes it, like, literally the last person that talks to him is the opinion he ends up having sometimes. So I do think I think world leaders were, especially the ones that are enemies or enemy adjacent, I would say, I think we're a little bit on watch, because they're like, he could be crazy. I mean, he did take out Soleimani. He did, he did several things where you were like, okay, he's actually, taking action. Whereas we had Obama before, who, his famous red line in Syria and chemical weapons and things like that just never would do anything. And Biden's been kind of the same way. And I think that I think with Biden and Obama specifically, dictators and bad people in the world, I think, have known that they can get away with a lot, because Obama and Biden have been so scared of escalation. I'm putting it in scare quotes, because I think people should be scared to escalate with us, not us with them. I think that we're getting that causality backwards. And I think they know that they can get away with it. I think they saw Afghanistan. I think that was a point that Trump made that was good in the debate was, you guys screwed up Afghanistan so badly. It let everyone know that they've got a green light essentially to do whatever. And we are incompetent to.
But that was negotiated by him and Pompeo.
Right. But I mean,
without the Afghani government.
I've said over and over again, it was Trump's plan. Now, I will say this. We always have plans for these kind of things, and they do have contingencies. And the truth is, the Taliban had not hold up their end of the contingencies, and all the generals were telling Biden not to do it. That if you don't leave any troops there, this is going to go badly. He chose to ignore them. Now, Biden claims that they didn't tell him that, which either means Biden can't remember, or you know what I mean. And both options are really bad. He either didn't listen to all his generals, and he was so stubborn. And so, I get that old politicians, really all of us, we get more stubborn as we get old. I'm 41. I am self-recognizably more stubborn than I was 10 years ago, for sure, about certain things. Once you're hitting 80, I imagine you get even more stubborn. The truth is, Biden's wanted out of Afghanistan for 20 years. And I think he was not going to take no for an answer. He wasn't going to leave a single troop back there. And I don't think he cared what the result was. I think that's poor leadership. I think that's not good being a president. You have to look at the situation on the ground, and you can look at the best laid plan and go, we got to change it. I mean, plans change all the time. Now, but I'm totally fair. That was Trump's plan. Trump was also desperate to get out, but unfortunately, it didn't happen under Trump. And maybe I do think Trump was more likely to.
What was his reason for wanting to end that?
Well, everyone wanted. Here's the problem. That was a very popular thing. If you ask people, do you want to get out of Afghanistan? Overwhelmingly, Americans said yes. Now, issue polling, I think, is terrible. I'll be with you on that because most people don't understand the issues. B, it's all hypothetical until like it actually hits the fan. And so you can say we want to get out of Afghanistan, but then you do it that poorly and they'd be like, well, that's not how I wanted to get out of Afghanistan. So I think that everyone's just been looking at the polls and going, we have to get out of it. We have to do it. We have to do it. And I think both Biden and Trump looked at it politically instead of what was the right move for foreign policy. What keeps America safer? What keeps our troops safer? What is the right move for Afghanistan? We abandoned every Afghani. Is that what they are? Afghani, right?
Mm.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm losing my whatever that is, the noun version of so we abandoned the people that were translators for us, that worked with us, and then you know what? The Taliban is now hunting those people down and killing them. It wasn't just our soldiers, it wasn't just our people that were there. It was also the people that contracted with us. It was Afghanis that were there that we abandoned. Like it was a very, very bad thing. I think it definitely sent a signal to the world that you can get away with stuff. Trump didn't have that big of a foreign policy blunder. In fact, Donald Trump's foreign policy was better than I would have thought going into it in his term. I think most of that was because.
What do you say about her claim that world leaders are laughing at him?
Oh, yeah, I believe that. I think our own leaders are laughing at him behind closed doors. I mean, I think everyone rolls their eyes at him. It's just that Republicans have capitulated it for so long that they have to keep.
Yeah, I don't get that.
And which is silly. Now, I think world leaders think he's a joke for sure. However, I think it's pretty apparent that he listened to the people that he put in those positions more than Biden has. I think that that's pretty clear. I also think that he doesn't care that much about foreign policy, which is why his answer is always, I'll solve it in 24 hours. He doesn't want to do any of this stuff. He wants someone, he was going to hire someone else and you tell me what to do, what makes people like me. And I really think that's why he did everything. I don't think that look, I have no information here. So this is a little speculatory. I don't believe that Donald Trump he's never shown me that he actually has a policy he cares about or a principle that he cares about or some specific issue he really cares about. He has no policy platform. He never has. He flies with the wind. I don't believe for a second that like when we took out Soleimani, that what happened wasn't, hey, we've got an opportunity to take out this guy. Should we do it? Everyone will think you're a badass and it will be labeled as presidential. Yeah, let's do it. I think that's what went into it. I'm not saying it's the wrong decision. It was the right decision. I just think that's how far he's not ever looking ahead.
That's his capacity though.
Yeah. And to be fair, look, that can be
Obama would have asked all kinds of questions.
Well, and Obama would have
sat and watched it in a situation room.
And Clinton would have taken a poll on it. Literally. I mean, this is the difference. And to be fair, Clinton and Obama are much better politicians. There is a rubber meets the road situation that happens once you're the president or really any office, but specifically executives. You know, if you're a governor or if you're the president, you have to make decisions like that all the time. And no 2-minute answer in a debate is going to prep you for what you're actually going to have to do, which is why it's important that you have a cabinet. It's important that you have good generals. It's important that you have people around you that give you good advice. And I would say argue with each other. I think it's foolish to have people that just are yes men.
Bush had a lot of that.
Well, and I think you had a lot of yes men or people that fought with each other.
People that fought with each other.
I think most presidents do because the smart ones know that you have to have that turmoil. You have to have some fights. We've seen in almost all the Trump books since, which I've not really read any of those, but you know, you just see the clips and the highlights and people talking about them after they come out with people that were in the administration. That's a common theme, that there was a lot of like sort of vigorous, I wouldn't call it debate, but there was most of the time it just turned into trying to stab people in the back to get to be the person that gets in Trump's ear because they know that would work. Whereas I think with past presidents,
it's what they call being the adults in the room.
Right. But I think with Bush and Obama, you have, person A arguing one thing, person B arguing another thing right in front of each other, in front of the president. That is how we should be doing this stuff. So it does concern me because I don't think Trump actually has a good foreign policy. We might just get lucky and he hires people that he listens to, but I'm not confident. As I said the whole time, the problem with this 2024 race for me is that he's basically promised that he's not going to hire the adults. He's not going to hire people that might tell him no. That concerns me because I think like my
JD
dad,
Vance is a perfect example of that.
right. My dad texted me during the debate and he was just like, Trump is hanging himself with his own rope. Because that's what he did the whole debate. It's like, this is very easy. Any replacement level Republican politician could have debated Kamala Harris tonight and it would have been easy. You just go, when she says something, you go, well, 4 years ago, you didn't think that. I will give up my 2 minutes for you to explain what changed your mind. Not that your values haven't changed. We understand your values haven't changed, but what changed your mind on that policy specifically? For ABC to call.
Goddamn light keep going out.
Here's the other thing. Here's actually the part that actually made me go, ABC, this was terrible. They not only fact checked him 3 times and never her. At one point, for that question specifically, it was. Oh wait, is that my phone? Oh no, I didn't turn my thing. Wait, hold on. Now I've lost my train of thought. Sorry. Hold on. I've got a note here.
It's something that you didn't like about ABC while they were fact checking him and not her.
Oh gosh, I gotta find my note now. Yeah, I mean, basically, I gotta find it. I'll come back to it. You say something, and I'll find it.
I was gonna say that was gonna be our last issue. I'm gonna go to bed because I'm starting to yawn.
Okay, let me find it real quick, and then I'll tell you what it was. Because to me, it was just
you got a video going on this week? What are you doing a subject on? Is it on?
I'll do a post debate thing tomorrow with a friend. We'll talk about it. So I'll talk more about the debate for sure. But gosh, why can't I find my freaking? I literally rushed up here from downstairs, and I was like, I could hop on with Jerks. Okay. They hit him on. Well, first of all, the 2 things that killed me were asking him about the black thing, saying she wasn't black. Totally unnecessary to a presidential debate. That was not a debate. That wasn't a policy question. They did not ask her any such question. I agree. It was a stupid thing. Trump said.
She didn't make any such asinine statement.
She has said all sorts of things that are not true. And they did not fact check her on one thing that she said from the stage tonight. And she has said more as ridiculous stuff as that. I'm not saying, my point is, it didn't need to get brought up. It had nothing to do with the presidential debate at all. It was a him being mean to her question. They didn't ask her about any of this.
But I think that was the purpose of the question, was to say, and it wasn't the one question that they actually asked was, how did they say it? Something like, wasn't there do you regret being an asshole? To
her?
No, to him.
Here's my thing is that they didn't attack her on anything of not presidential substance. For example, my point is he's an idiot for saying that. Unnecessary. It's also stupid. No one cares about it. He looks like the bully in that situation. But all they brought up was that he was a bully. It had nothing to do with policy. It had nothing to do with anything. It had nothing to do with the president. It was a race baiting situation is what it was. I don't like it. No, but here's the thing that killed me about it. So not only did they never fact check her, Trump hits her on confronting her about wanting to confiscate guns. And they come back to him and they literally said, and just say, well, she, blah, blah. And they ran interference for her. It's crazy. She said it out loud. And she's trying to pretend it never happened. She hit him. She says, "You're lying about that. I've said that I wouldn't do that, and you are lying." He's not lying. And the fact that they didn't say, "Wait a minute, he's not lying. You said that a few years ago in your presidential campaign," is ridiculous. They did not hold her.
I think they tried to. This has gone so far off the rails. Like the whole campaign process.
I agree. I agree.
They're trying to bring to their credit, they're trying to bring some dignity back by not making it a boxing match. And as a result, they're not the Bob Woodwards of old saying, wait a minute, dude, you said this 2 months ago.
But that is the press's
30,
job.
40 years ago, the moderators would have said, would have called bullshit.
Well, I don't know. I didn't watch them that long ago, so I can't actually. I'd have to watch them to actually see if they actually
As
did.
a political scientist, you watch those old things.
I think the problem is that it's just not the press's job to run interference, and it's not their job to. I also think I think you're right. They've gone too far the other way. They've gone to this thing where they never press them. They pressed Trump a couple times. They didn't really follow up with her. They did not do the thing with her where they were like, but just to be clear, yes or no, you would, because I think that they're just going to let her ramble with her thing. Now, here's the thing. I think Trump lost. I just don't know if this makes a difference because I don't know that anything was said enough that swayed any voters tonight necessarily, but it's very hard to tell because I don't really understand these voters that are swayable at this point. They don't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I don't think there's. I think we can have the election now. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's much more to talk about. If this is the answers we're going to get anyway.
Oh yeah, you're totally right.
And all we're going to do is go to rally after rally after rally. Right. Haven't we already heard it because of the news coverage?
Yeah. By the way,
let's just vote.
How weird was it that the last thing I want to say? How weird was it that he got to use her line about her interrupting him instead of, because all she wanted was for him to interrupt her, and she actually interrupted him, and he was like, "I'm speaking now," which I thought was genius. Actually, is that that's the moment she wanted, and he got it, which I thought was actually
she actually got that at one point. I thought.
Well, she did, but for him to
his mic was actually off, and you couldn't really hear him.
So was hers.
Yeah.
But the point was, it was just kind of.
That's what I think they got to dial back. I think they got to take the gloves off and leave the mics on.
Well,
and you said that with the last debate.
No, I like
it was the Trump campaign who was good with having the people running.
Yeah, not
the
Trump
campaign.
Yeah,
who wanted the mics off.
Behind his back, they were like, "This will help him because it will be."
Yeah.
It will be a leash on him that we can't keep on him out there. But if CNN's muting the mics, that's even. And you're right, Biden would not have gotten through those word salads because Trump would have interrupted him. It wouldn't have worked as well. So I think this debate, if this really is the only debate we get, you're right. There is no substance here. Hey, by the way, she does have an issues part of her site now. Just finally got one this week.
Oh, there we go.
So she's at least
what
trying.
What are we going to talk about next Friday when you come back?
Less than 2 months out. So you're right. There is no substance here. We are not talking about actual policy stuff. I think it's interesting that neither one of them would answer the question. She wouldn't answer the question on what restrictions would you put on abortion, and he wouldn't answer the question, would you veto it? When to me, simplest answer ever for Trump, and he just can't get it right. He said it with her. He couldn't figure out how to say it with him. He was like, hey, you're never going to get that done because we're split 50-50. You're not going to get, there's not going to be one that comes across my desk. That was basically right, except that he was hitting her on that instead of being like, it won't come to my desk for that same reason. It was just kind of silly.
I see. I think this is, I'm having a tough time. Everybody is so split that, and with states like North Carolina being light pink instead of red.
Yeah, I haven't paid a lot of attention to the
Florida,
there, but I know they're going there.
What's her name? I don't know. Debbie something Powell, hyphenated last name, is running against Rick Scott.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah,
she's closed a gap.
Yeah, I mean, I think here's the problem. I think Democrats get too excited about red states turning blue potentially, and they waste a ton of money on races they're going to lose when they could have spent that money on winnable races elsewhere in the country. It's this. Like
I think those are the ones where they lose a Senate race.
No, they won't lose in Florida or Texas. It's. I would be very surprised.
No, I'm saying the Democrats will lose Florida.
Yes. Well, but Texas. They don't have it. They're not losing a seat there.
But no, it would lose. These are the states that could be flipped presidentially. I don't think Florida or Texas is going to happen this time around.
Oh, for blue? No.
Well, but look how close she is with Rick Scott. Look how close Allred is on Lyin' Ted.
Yeah, but keep in mind, 2 or 3 percentage points is not very close in these races.
I mean, for Trump, it was close enough.
Well, I'm saying, like, in the Senate races.
Wasn't he...
The Senate race is specific.
One of the other shows I was watching earlier today, they were saying about how he was down in one of the states and actually won it.
Is this 2020?
I don't know if it was 20 or 16.
Well, I mean,
I've been following, going back, and
the poll stuff is weird because really, like if the poll is asking the question, who do you prefer nationally, Trump, Clinton, Trump, Biden, Trump, Harris? If that's the question, the way the Electoral College works
doesn't consider that.
I know, but the way it works is that a Democratic presidential candidate needs to have at least 3 points on a Republican. The way the states are right now, that's just right this moment. That's not always the case. Obviously, states change. Needs to have like a 3-point advantage in national polls. He was within the margin of error on that with Clinton, basically, and he outperformed the polls in 2016 and 2020, state ones and the national polls. So that would be the reason I give Trump an edge in the race right now, is because they're neck and neck, and the last 2 election cycles we had with the same candidate underestimated his support. So if that holds, and she's not really leading by 3, or she needs to be leading by 3 or 4 percentage points nationally, looking at the last 2 elections and looking at the data that we had before the election and after the election and how accurate were the polls, how bad were they off and stuff. So that's why I give him a little bit of an edge right now. But I think that this really does boil down to, you're right, there's no substance here. We could have the election tomorrow because nothing's going to
change.
These candidates aren't going to get better in the next less than 2 months at this point. They're not going to get, I think they could lose. I think both of them could lose the election, but neither one of them are going to win the election. Donald Trump's not going to start behaving like a normal candidate, and she's not going to be able to do a press conference, because she just can't do it. I think that's my biggest question. And that's the other thing. If I was Trump, I would have loved to debate Kamala Harris because it's not that hard. I would have brought up the second, because it's worth bringing up. What, you really think you can get in a room with Putin? You won't even do a press conference with the liberal media? You're scared of them? You have to do a dress rehearsal for a dinner party, and you think you're going to go negotiate with these dictators that, frankly, like, I'm not saying this is a good reason, but like, frankly, they're going to not respect you because you're a woman. And I'm not saying that's fair, but I'm just saying I doubt Putin is going to give her respect, or Xi Jinping or anyone. Like, my point is, I think that that is a problem with those specific people. North Korea, Iran, for sure. You think she's going to be able to sit down with anyone in the Middle East who think that women need to be covered from head to toe and can only do things that have permission of their husband? You think that that's the person that's going to be able to negotiate this stuff well? I'm not saying that's fair or that we can't have a woman president, but these are real questions. They're going to come up. These are real things she's going to have to be able to do if she's the president. I would be hitting her on all the things that she can't do right now. You can't do a press conference. You're not going to be able to negotiate with Putin. I would just, like, these are the things I would have done over and over again, because I think that people can see that. And his word salads about worst ever in history, blah, 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 they mean nothing to no one. Even people that want him to win and will vote for him, I'm sure, watched that debate tonight and went, yeah, he's hanging himself with his own rope. He literally can't just stay on message for an hour and a half. It's just not that hard. He should be able to win this race easily, but he's not talented enough.
All right, man. So what do you got going on Friday?
We are reupholstering the boat at the lake house. And so
cool.
But my brother and I have been charged with removing all the seats so that we can bring them back to the city to have someone upholster them. I pay nothing for the boat. My very generous parents pay for the boat, which I don't know if you've ever heard anything about boats. They're expensive.
It stands for Bring On Another 1,000.
Yes. And the happiest 2 days of a boat owner's life are the day they buy it and the day they sell it, right? So I pay not a dime for the boat. So I am happy to be Manuel Lebor when it comes to having to do work.
What do you have? What is it?
It's a Cobalt 252. It's a wonderful boat. I love it. It's a 2008. This is how it works in my family. So we had this old web craft that kept dying. And every time it was my weekend at the lake, the boat wouldn't work. So I was finally fed up. And it happened one July 4th weekend. And I was like, I'm done with this. My little brother, I was like, hey, you're the younger brother. You always get your way. you start working right now with my cousin, who also owns the house with us.
So this is like a deck boat.
Yeah, so it's like a 15 passenger, like ski boat. And I was like, hey, you start working on getting a new boat. And I went back to work because I had to work at retail that weekend. And they called me the next day. We bought a boat. I was like, wow, that was fast. So my brother is the schmoozer. I'm just behind the scenes. But yeah, if I get asked to help maintain the boat when I don't have to pay for it, I'm happy to spend a Friday tearing seats out of it.
Where the hell did it go? I just had it. Is it on here?
Yeah, so that's why we're reupholstering it. We're trying to make it last as long as possible because boats, like everything else, have become insanely expensive over the last few years.
Yeah.
I thought the boat was expensive when we bought it in 2008. It would be like 250 grand now. And I'm like, we're not buying a boat. And I've been informed I have to buy the next one. So I'm trying to put that off for as long as possible.
There we go. Okay.
So that's what I'll be doing is we got a red one. I will be taking the seats out of a boat and sweating probably in the Oklahoma sun.
Very cool. What lake is that?
We go to a lake called Eufaula. It's a great spot in eastern Oklahoma. My grandparents built a house there 51 years ago, and they only had like one grandkid at the time. It was the place we went every summer holiday weekend. The whole family was there, so the place sleeps 32 people. We can cram people in every corner of the house. And so it's where we grew up. That's the reason my extended family, I think, is so tight, is because we spent 3 weekends at the lake together every year growing up, and it's a good thing if you can do it. If you can swing having a spot where your family goes and hangs out with each other, I highly encourage it. I think it's good.
Yeah, my parents come down here.
Yeah, because you're in Florida. It's a great place. We go to Florida every year in October, and love it.
Where to?
Down to 30A.
To where?
30A, like all that's like Seaside and normally around Rosemary Beach. Like
what side? Like Atlantic or Gulf or
Gulf? It's between Panama City and Destin.
Oh, okay. You're up in the Panhandle then.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm further down.
Right, but it's just beach, water. I used to not be a beach guy. Then I had kids, and I realized this is like the best vacation you can take kids on. They're like all here running around. I can read my book. It's great.
Building sandcastles and
all that
to the water. And
although I mean, I've heard there's a little more shark action up there. This year. So we'll see how that goes next month.
Nice. All right, man. Well, have a good trip. We'll see you in about a week and a half.
Yep.
Blake Fisher from The Homeless Conservative. That's where you can get a hold of him. Blake at thehomelessconservative.com, or just go to the website, thehomelessconservative.com. And Matt was at a bar probably. He does the Daily Crypto News, and he's running for Congress in the 7th District for Ohio. So
I probably won't be able to listen, but I look forward to hearing how you and Matt make fun of me on Friday.
Yeah. Have it on. Let your brother listen to it. So here's the knucklehead.
I may try. If I can remember, I may pull it up. I'll call you because I know you'll say something that will force me to put down the wrench and call you. I'm going to call into
there you go.
Triple A.
Game on. Game on.
Okay, I might do that.
All
right.
Thanks for reaching out.
Yeah.
Hope it didn't bore you too bad tonight.
No, I mean, I wanted to pull my hair out during it, but it was fine overall.
Yeah. Well, it looks like you already got the sides. You just got the top left.
You're talking about the hair?
Yeah, to pull your hair out.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's just this side that's a little shit. Really, this one.
Yeah.
Just all this, yeah. All right. See you, Yergs.
All right, buddy. I'll see you in a week and a half, and hope to talk to you from the lake on Friday. You like turning it off now, or what are you doing?
Trying.
There he goes. All right, Blake Fisher, thanks for joining. That's it, gang. I'm going to go get something to drink and get ready for my own show tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. If you're watching, you can get us then because we're on social media, almost 15 channels. We're upping that fairly soon to all 15. And then we're probably changing platforms where we do that from. Going back to this one other that is a long thing, technical stuff. Anyway, I'm rambling now. I can tell.
First of all, what?
Yeah, I know, Barry. Sorry. It's late.
What?
Yeah. So with that, we'll see you tomorrow. Debate's over. We're over. Peace out. Keep talking. You've been up the middle.